The banking system is in the process of changing. And if you don't pay attention to these changes, you will be absolutely blindsided when the outcome is in your face. I'm about to expose the complete illusion of the Fed stress test. And guess what? 23 banks that participated, they all passed. I'm going to show you what they are not taking into account, because they are now allowing money to come out of both the banks and the corporation. I mean, banks are corporations after all, which means that in this next upcoming crisis, they're going to be dependent on taxpayer bailouts. The ratio of liquid assets to deposits in the banking sector has declined 6 straight months. It's time people wake up and see what's happening. Coming up. We all know this saying. We've heard it many times, and it's true. You should never, ever let a good crisis go to waste. You should rather use that to consolidate your position, which is exactly what the banking sector has done over the years. This goes back to the beginning of this current trend. And these were the number of smaller banks in the system. Now you've got very few. And they're all consolidated just into the basic big 4 or 5. JP Morgan, Bank of America, who, was caught in fraud and double dipping on fees and stuff like that. But that's another video on another day. Wells Fargo, you know the names. So they're the ones, and we certainly saw that JP Morgan just absorbed SVB. So, this is the way that it goes until you have 1 or 2, or in this case 5, and you really have no choices. And what you really have is a basic monopoly or duopoly. And then your costs go up exponentially because it is the bigger banks that gobble up the competition. And in fact, on a global basis, these systemically important banks, and any bank could have the ability to take the system down, but who's in the top 10? There's JP Morgan, there's Bank of America, there's Wells Fargo, and there's Morgan Stanley. But what you're also watching is the same kind of result of all of this gobbling up of the competition. The big just keep getting bigger. And if they were too big to fail before, you know darn well they're that much bigger if they fail. So bailouts, yeah, bail-ins for sure, and everything in between. But they won't do the bail-ins until they're ready to let the system go, because they don't really want you to realize that this is a probability, not just a possibility, but a probability. And this whole system is a lot more systemic. Are you ready for this next big, ginormous crisis? Because on the surface, hey, they all passed the stress test, and look at this quarterly net income. Wow, it looks pretty good. In fact, strong growth in non-interest income, in other words, trading revenue, reflecting the accounting treatment of the acquisition of 2 failed institutions. They benefited from the failed institutions. Isn't that interesting? And record high trading revenues at large banks outpaced lower net interest income and higher non-interest expense. Higher non-interest expense. So their costs are going up, and the income that we think of, the interest income, which is the basic foundation of banks, that's going down. But their trading revenues and that leverage is also going up. And so they show quarterly net income. Industry net income would have been roughly flat quarter over quarter, and you can see it jumped right here, but it would have been flat quarter over quarter without the accounting impact of 2 failed bank acquisitions. So when there's an acquisition, the acquiring bank gets all the goodies and all the garbage stays in the FDIC system. So look at that. Quarterly net income went up, and on the surface, doesn't look too bad. The banking industry reported net income of $79.8 billion in the first quarter. Boy, they have like a lot of income to distribute, don't they? Up $11.5 billion or 16.9% from the prior quarter, thanks to those accounting gimmicks and the impact from those two failed banks' acquisitions. So on the surface, this actually does look pretty good. I mean, this was 2020, but look at all the earnings and how well they've been doing through 2022 as the Fed and global central bankers have raised interest rates like crazy and actually impacted other things, which we're going to look at. But no worries, nothing to see here. All the banks passed the Fed's stress test. Perception management at its finest. All's fine in the banks. Keep your wealth in there. Keep your money in there. Listen to what they're telling you on Wall Street. Sure, they're doing all of this for your best interest, and I hope you realize I'm being completely facetious. But hey, big bank stocks advanced after the lenders aced that Fed stress test. Wow, look at that. See, banking crisis in March. Oh, that's yesterday. This is today. What are you worried about? Fed said lenders can start making payout announcements on Friday. Woohoo! They can start paying out to the shareholders, which is really what this is all about. It's not public benefit, it's shareholder benefit. So JP Morgan, Wells Fargo to pay higher dividends after stress tests. Morgan Stanley, Goldman, Citigroup also announced increases. But this is what you really need to know. Once they send that money out, it's gone. They go into crisis and they don't have enough liquidity. Well, just like we saw in 2008, there will be bailouts using taxpayer money after the bail ends. Now you could say to me, but Lynette, we just had all those banks fail and they didn't do any bail-ins. Well, they did with Credit Suisse because of the cocoa bonds. But in the US, they didn't bail in anybody's money. Why? Do you think that it's possible that they didn't do that because they didn't want to create more runs in an already extraordinarily fragile system? They're not ready for you to know the truth yet.